Tyler, what?
Boom.
Boom. What's going on behind you over there? Your background looks a little different.
Oh, yes, there's an air mattress in the behind me because my office doubles as a guest room. And we have some friends and their 8-year-old coming for the weekend. And I live in a pretty small condo. And so, you have to make the best of the space you've got. So they will
True.
be sleeping here tomorrow night. Yeah, it makes it definitely look less. It makes my little library wall look less cultured when there's
Yeah,
a
it
air mattress.
does.
It is one of those air mattresses though that you plug it in and turn the power on and it looks like a spider. It like the legs like come out and so it's like elevated. It's
Yeah,
actually,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
like that.
it's a pretty solid air mattress. If you put like a mattress pad thing on it and just throw a sheet on there, some people might not even know.
I 100% agree. It is a really good investment if you have friends who want to visit to invest in a really nice air mattress. They're pretty dope. The good ones that do that, amazing.
I mean, if you're tight on space, which hey, that's
Everyone in 2022. Well,
mm-hmm.
inflation, am I right? Um,
That was corny.
I know. Also, what's going on with your voice? It's a little
I
dark
almost
and
got
deep in
you.
there.
Well, everyone should, up until now, we've been recording our episodes back to back, but obviously last night, we split up this week. And so we're now recording on Thursday night versus, we did the episode 5, which was Bad Fortune on Wednesday night after the episode. And so,
Right.
um, I had to work dinner and it was at a loud place. And I must have been shouting or something because I sound a little gravelly. It brings me down an octave.
Yep. Um,
Bring the whole elf choir down an octave. You ever watched Elf? It's fun.
I have not.
You
Final
never seen
question.
Elf?
Oh, the movie Elf. I thought you said Alf, and I was like, I mean, I know Alf who he is and stuff, but I didn't watch the show.
No,
Elf,
never
yes,
mind.
yes. Um, Final question. Did you guys go trick or treating, and do you have candy left over, or did you have candy at your location at your place to give out to kids?
I don't have leftover candy because we didn't give any candy out to kids because we weren't in our place. And part of that is also the neighborhood I live in. I'm on a street, again, said I was in a condo. The neighborhood I live in has these like triple decker buildings. And so there's like 3 units in a building. I live on the top floor of the building.
No one's gonna come in to
Um,
go trick or treat up there.
yeah, I mean they could ring the front door, but also it's just like people don't ring the
People
doorbell.
to bring their kids there.
They go to the bigger houses,
Yeah,
They want the full size candy bars. So we actually drove to a neighborhood where our friends live like adjacent to some of these wildly big houses.
perfect,
And so then they've got a 2-year-old. So we took our
perfect.
baby and like followed them around and just like saw the like absolutely gaudy wild Halloween decorations at some of these places. It was like people who must have like spent $10,000 on like life-size Halloween creatures in their yard. It's insanity. How about you?
Yeah. We like I live in a disgustingly cute cul-de-sac, and all the neighbors meet in the middle with this in the roundabout with the tree. And there's like there's two-year olds, an infant, and a 5-year-old, and a bunch of retired people and stuff. There's like 6 houses, and we all meet in the middle, and then we walk down our cul-de-sac across the street to a similar location where there's like really nice houses, and we kind of hit that. But I forgot to put the bowl of candy out in our door because we were going to be gone. And I buy, of course, the candy that I want to eat. And I have tons of Sour Patch Kids and Starbursts because I like the gummy, chewy type candy. So I've been eating way too much of it.
I am not. Yeah, I've got a confession for you. I'm not a candy person, really. I just don't enjoy candy. I would much rather eat like give me a donut any day, and I'm
Oh,
all about a
interesting.
donut. Like I'm
Yeah.
like a pastry carb person to a fault.
Right. Well, I would say I'm not generally a candy person either. If I'm gonna do candy, that's kind of candy I'm gonna do. But if you're gonna give me something, I'm a salty guy, so like give me some like chips or some French fries. I'm a
Oh,
savory snack food
sweet and
guy.
salty. Oh yeah.
Okay, we've talked for 5 minutes. Okay.
Shall we begin?
Let's do it.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to This American Horror Story, an unofficial podcast about the FX hit show American Horror Story. I am your host, Tyler Moss, here with my co-host.
Chris, you said, "What's up, everyone?" Hey, Tyler.
Hey, hey, hey.
Thanks for joining us, Mister Man. I don't know.
We're in a mood tonight, I guess, apparently. Tonight we are here talking about episode 6 of American Horror Story NYC. That is the episode titled The Body. This is the episode that debuted at 11 o'clock on Wednesday. But again, we're recording it on Thursday and breaking up the episodes this week. We are now officially, I guess definitely more than halfway past the halfway point of this
Yeah.
season. We only have 4 episodes left.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really, I mean, I don't know. I've got some questions for you about where things are going in these final 4
Yeah.
episodes. I got some thoughts, but we will definitely get there. I don't know that we have we're not going to be bringing a whole lot of additional commentary on this episode because of the way the episodes are structured. We used a lot of the like inbound fan mail type stuff
Last
yesterday,
episode. Yeah.
and so the new stuff we'll bring in next week. So I don't have a whole lot of stuff to cover there, other than to remind everybody that, as always, you can reach out to us at thisamericanhorrorstory@gmail.com, and we will respond to emails and questions and everything else, or bring them on the show. Same thing at our Facebook page at facebook.com/thisamericanhorrorstory. Either message or you can post a comment on one of our kind of post updates when episodes go live. Also, as always, we'd love it if you rate us and review us on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. Sometimes I forget to say that, and I think it's been a bit, but it means a lot, and it helps, the podcast reach a wider audience, which I'd be curious to see. I think we've talked about this, like what the American Horror Story audience looks like after our season 11, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a lot of new people who've started watching recently? There's probably plenty of people who watched for a while and have kind of fallen off. I don't know. I'd be curious. Maybe it's people who kind of come back and forth and watch some seasons and don't watch others, and kind of just see how they feel after watching the first episode or something. But
Right.
I think from how we felt and talked about this season, it's been one of the better seasons.
I think social media is showing that too. People are like kind of pretty into it. And I'm, we're like we talked about last episode, there's little shades of classic American Horror Story, but then we're also getting this brand new tone that they haven't done before that you and I are enjoying.
Yeah, I'm into it.
I want to also jump in. You can also find us on YouTube.
You can. We are now on YouTube.
Like and subscribe.
These episodes. Got to say it now, I guess. That's part of the spin. Anyway, before we dive into the meat of the body, that sounds weird. Kris, what are you drinking this evening?
I am drinking a glass of Parducci Merlot, small lot from Mendocino County. What are you drinking?
I am drinking a far less sophisticated glass of red wine that is from a box from Spain somewhere. I forget what the box is called. It was just like a easy drink.
It's called wine, vino.
I'm out of cider, so cheers to that.
Yeah. Hey, cheers. That's what happens when you do a Thursday night.
Kris, can you walk us through the cold open of this episode, please?
This might be our shortest one we've had, with the exception of the one that there was just not one at all. It's funny because in my mind, I was thinking this episode, I was like, we're due for a flashback. This opening cold open is not necessarily a flashback, but we do get Fire Island 1981, which is the current time for the story that we're watching. And there's, it's evening. There's a gay couple smooching on the beach next to the ocean. And then one of them, they're getting a little hot and heavy, and one of them leans back and seemingly gets bit by something. And he thinks he gets bit. And it turns out they look over, and it's actually like a hand sticking out, like a claw hand, skeleton type hands, definitely decomposed. And they start digging around, looking to see more. And they find what looks to be a head with a mask on it, possibly a leather mask buried in the sand. Boom. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Short and sweet. My first impression when I saw this cold open was, oh, did we find Big Daddy's body? Is he really dead after all? Is that where your mind went to?
100%. I was like, is this Big Daddy? Yep. Because we knew that he possibly had died via Sam's story 2 years ago. His body was decomposed. So, honestly, there might be a connection that we can talk about, because the flashback we get later is 2 years ago, 1979, Fire Island. So I'm curious what's happening there. We get a lot of connections in this episode, so there's got to be something meaningful there. But
I know.
I thought it was Big Daddy as well.
Right. I mean, I don't imagine that's coincidental, right? So
Yeah.
I think there's some things to unpack there. This episode was written by Brad Falchuk, Manny Coto, and Our Lady J, and it was directed by John J. Gray. So again, all American Horror Story veterans and
Hmm.
all folks I think who've already either written or directed episodes this
In
season, I'm
this
pretty
season, yeah,
sure.
right, right.
So where do we kick off with things? This episode opens with Pat and Gino together going to go see Dr. Wells. And they basically are pressuring her for blood samples of all the folks who were at the remember when she took the blood samples, excuse
Yep.
me, after the fire at the bar, because they seem to think there's reason to believe one of the people there is Whiteley. And I believe, and well, they knew Whiteley was there because they were chasing, obviously Gino was chasing him throughout the hospital, and he closed him inside of a freezer in the morgue.
Right.
So they know he was there. um a couple questions. Well, can I present you with one up front that's a little bit jumping the gun?
Sure.
So we know that Patrick has seen Wiley before, right?
Right.
Because now in our flashback later, he saw him on Fire Island, and he
Right.
saw him also at the hospital, but he clearly was not putting two and two together.
Yeah.
I guess you could surmise that Patrick was in such a state of shock when he was on Fire Island after the death that like some of those memories are a bit of a blur for him. So he doesn't
Or
remember
he
Wiley
was
from that.
so drugged up that he just didn't recognize a face or realize who that person was because he was disgusted also about what was about to happen and the shock also. That's the only way to justify him not knowing a face from a very pivotal moment in his life.
Right.
Like really pivotal.
Right. So I think that's got to be, if we're being, I don't know, generous, I feel like that's our interpretation. So we'll call that our interpretation for the sake of the show, right?
Yeah.
What's interesting to me though in this scene is that, sorry, go ahead.
I was a pin on that, and this is kind of a theme for me in this episode. Is like I'm trying to remember who's seen who and who met who and who knows who because the whole Hannah and Adam thing completely threw me off. That they had this connection, like we talked about our last episode, where was there a missing scene where we saw them actually have a connection? It was just kind of like it was just normal that they knew each other. So this episode we see a lot of that, but when Hannah meets Patrick and Gina, I'm like, wait, they've not already met? Because it's just kind of confusing about who knows who.
It is, and there's a couple moments like that in this episode too, where it's like,
So
oh, I didn't realize you guys. I mean, we've seen you talk, and we didn't know you knew each other, kind of
right,
thing.
right,
Or,
right,
yeah,
exactly. It's
yeah,
a
I agree with you.
little
The
hard
conversations have been a little bit confusing.
if you're murder
Um,
mystery detectives like we are.
that's right. Well, so one thing that was a little bit, I don't know. Um, I was gonna say bothersome to me in this scene is like Wells seems to be protecting Whiteley by not offering up his blood sample, and I guess doctor patient confidentiality, she says, but at the same time we know she's dedicated to the cause, and they like have her say that and everything. But I also like she already went and like collected the samples illegally basically, so why is she now really be upholding this?
Well, that's a good point. And I think they don't want the actual blood samples. They want the paperwork that goes with the blood samples. They want to know who she collected blood from. So they have like a roster of who was at that party.
Right. Okay, so they want that's something.
But agreed, all of a sudden, and then she says something like, I'm looking out for this community, your community, more than anybody else. And she kind of is in a way that she's trying to figure out this disease that's affecting mostly gay men.
The community.
But they're also getting murdered by somebody, and she won't step into that game or that court. So it's a little, yeah, it's a weird choice of her, someone who's already essentially done an unethical medical um uh
Right, it's like she has some ethical
taking
ones
of,
but not others a little bit, so
yeah,
a little bit confusing.
yeah.
But that's, I think, pretty much, I think that's all we really see of Wells this episode, right? And I don't think we get any Adam in this episode at all.
No, it's kind of interesting because like we got a lot of Adam last episode. So if we had watched these back to back, it would have felt like a good pairing because we got a lot of, Adam in that episode, and now we're getting more of Patrick and the other
Yeah, it's like we have
team.
Fran, Adam Wells, Theo, Kathy in the
Right.
front episode, and the real
Right.
only carry through is Patrick and Gino,
Right.
who are really, I guess, probably our primary protagonists in this season. It seems.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like Gino and Patrick are, and then we have Adam as kind of the
Third,
secondary, but
yeah.
yeah.
Back at police headquarters, Patrick's kind of getting the side eye, and well, first of all, the hospital called to complain about Patrick being there, which is like, Wells, if you're really helping, like, why would you make a big deal of that? So I don't know if she initiated the call or what. Um, but while he's there is when Patrick gets the call from Frankie St. Vincent, I think is the name, on Fire Island, saying that, we found a dead body. It seems to be in line with, they're wearing leather, so we kind of realized that the main police wouldn't come out here, but we hear that you actually are investigating, these murders on the gay community. So will you come out here and investigate it?
Where we get Patrick's really one of his best lines, and Gino asks him like, "Why did they call you?" It's not even his jurisdiction. And Patrick says something along the lines of, did you write the line down?"
No, I don't know that I did.
I think he says something like, "Because I'm the only cop gay enough to care."
That was a good line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, like he, you know, well, so that's one step ahead, because I wanted to point out for a couple things
Oh,
first. First of all,
my bad.
we also know at this point that, like, it's underscored that, like, all the cops are treating him differently at this point because he's a gay cop, and so everybody at the office knows, obviously, and
Even his partner, he's like, "Hey, just go make jokes behind my back." But I
yeah.
feel like there's something about his partner might be a little nicer or maybe gay. I don't know.
I don't know.
More
Yeah, who
empathetic,
knows?
we
But
think.
basically, like, this is the exact reason he didn't want it to be out,
Right.
because he didn't want to have to deal with this shit, right?
Right.
Um, Also, we get right after this is when we get the flash to Sam, who we did not see in the previous episode. He's getting some weird statues unpacked, and he gets a call from Patrick saying, "We have a problem." Now, this was a little bit of a WTF moment, because we've seen Patrick and Sam interact before, and I don't feel like, well, I feel like we do. It's almost like I want to go back and rewatch the scene where Patrick shows up at Sam's party, because I feel like if I was to rewatch that, I'd be like, okay, Sam does act like he's seen Patrick before, um, but we don't really get any details. So,
Right.
like, with a
And
little
he,
distance, this felt like a little bit random. But I feel like if I went back and watched it, it'd be like, oh no, they actually did know each other. So it's more hint of
yeah,
that than we realize.
this is one of the few seasons that has made me want to go back immediately and rewatch other episodes, which I generally don't have with American Horror Story because things don't make sense. This actually seems like I remember that interaction that you're talking about, and I want to see exactly how they played it, because I do remember us talking about how Sam says, like, he alludes to Patrick's sexuality, and he's like, I know who you are, and now having this information, it's sort of like, oh, they do know each other, and he actually does know. It wasn't that Patrick was just like horribly disguised or not effectively disguised closeted gay man.
Right. So we have Patrick reaching out to Sam, um, and there's some problem related to the dead body that they both know about, that
Mm-hmm.
is a secret we haven't been privy to yet.
Right.
Meanwhile, our friend Harry, Dennis O'Hare, who we haven't seen in a little bit,
Henry.
Did I write Henry, thank you, Henry, is meeting with a mobster. I think we pretty
Yeah.
quickly get, and we've had some hints about mobsters previously. Obviously, we had the sense that Kathy's businesses are funded by the mob. We had the sense that the other leather bar is funded by the mob.
And some of our listeners have written in and said, like, yeah, that's a thing. That was a big thing.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard also that there's theories that the mob was involved in, like, Stonewall and stuff like that. And so
Wow.
I don't have the details on that, so I don't want to give too much more. I remember, I don't even remember who was telling me about this recently, so I kind of want to go look up the details and bring it back next week.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just say, I feel like the mob, I don't know if they'll continue to play a bigger role, but they certainly do in this episode, right? And they want Henry, who we realize is actually a hitman, to carry out a hit on Gino, because the police are asking them to do it, because he's bothering the police too much. Which, okay, he does have a crusade against the police. Um,
Yeah.
I don't
And
know that I don't know. I mean, I
it's a
guess it's
stretch.
possible. Yeah, but I don't know. It makes me wonder if any of the if it's like our friend Mac Marzara or something like that. Who's the dirty cop, right?
Yeah. It's the mob doesn't, we've talked about this too, that possibly a lot of these gay bars or bathhouses are fronts for the mob to launder money, perhaps, or whatever they might be doing. So they don't want to lose that. If the police are really forced to go in and investigate this, then that might kill those operations.
Right,
Yada
exactly.
yada.
Mm-hmm. Um, but kind of the piece that you were hinting at previously, Patrick lies to Gino about the body, saying it's related to the Mai Tai killer at that point. Ironically, we later learn it is actually related to the
Yeah,
Mai Tai killer.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Um, but Gino doesn't trust Patrick at this point, which fair enough. I suppose, especially, I mean, again, the time jumps between episodes are a little weird. Like we don't like how recently was Barbara's death, right? Like not that
Yeah.
long ago. This is a long summer, by the way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Very active.
but Gino tracks Patrick and sees him climb in a car with Sam. So again, Patrick is lying, obviously, and so he has reason not to trust him. I feel
Yeah.
bad for. I like actually do feel bad for Gino at this point. Like, I don't think Patrick intends to be a bad guy. I think clearly the way this is shown, and we'll get into it. Like it wasn't meant to. This wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah. I mean,
But
his giant personality trait is secrets. Like he hides his sexuality, he hides his fetishes, he hides his bodies. He hides
right,
his affairs, because, and this is what, when Gino and him are talking, this is what kind of bugged me was Gino gets a little jealous and suspicious. It's like, are you going to go sleep with someone else? And I feel like we just had an episode where Patrick confessed that he had been doing that, and that, so I don't think Patrick would just go do that and not tell him at this point. Like a lot, those cards are on the table. So that was a little weird for me.
like Patrick's like, excuse me, I'm too busy to have an affair right now,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Um, but then we jump to Fire Island. Pat and Sam show up to Pat. Pat and Sam show up together. I don't think we knew they were pals. Like we're beginning to
No,
realize, yeah.
they have a bond, a trauma bond.
Yeah. The camera shots here are a little interesting. It like looks like they're coming from a security camera. I don't know if you kind of noticed that when they like start coming into the house on
I
Fire Island.
did not notice that, but that makes sense because of it's Sam's house.
Right. Um, I don't know. And so they're starting to hint at stuff about like they indicate that they were the ones that buried the body. They indicate they were well, at least Sam was very high. There's again talk of a lot of drugs. Um, and as they dig up the body, we kind of start to see all the chunks of the body surface. When out of nowhere, Henry and Gino show up. I skipped the part, of course,
The
where Henry's
flashback.
surprised. Well, no, I skipped the part where
Oh,
Henry surprises them.
oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. That was tight.
Henry surprises Gino back
Yeah.
at his condo after he's returning to the house after seeing Patrick leave with Sam. And Henry's just there and he's like, "Hey, the mob wants to kill you because you're sniffing around so much. They told me to do it. I'm not going to do it, but you better quit it." And then Gino, of course, puts the same guilt trip on him as always that, um, you know, how about you actually do something about these killers that are out on the loose? That's the reason I'm ringing the bells here. And mentions Fire Island, and that's when Henry's like, "Oh, I think
Oh
your
shit.
friend Patrick, you know,
Mm-hmm.
has Henry met Patrick? Well, we know Henry's met Patrick, but does Henry know Patrick and Gino were together before this? I think he just knows Fire Island something's up because I
This
don't
is my question. Who knows who, and where have people met? Because it's a little confusing at this point.
because I don't remember Patrick interviewing Henry because I think it's always been Gino that's interacted with Henry at the
Yeah,
brownstone.
right. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I can't remember if Patrick ever went there and interviewed him.
Mm-hmm.
This is why it's worth a rewatch, because now I'll pay attention more to who met who, because they're, reminds me, again, I'm gonna say this, like an Agatha Christie novel where these relationships that you didn't know about in the beginning all of a sudden like come out in the open. You're like, oh, they actually knew each other, or oh,
Mm.
they had a previous relationship in a different context. And This
Right.
one, this is a little more like, so there's subtlety, there's heavy-handed, and then there's just confusing. And this is kind of confusing. I still like it. I'm into it, but it's a little confusing.
Well, so Henry and Gino show up on the beach um, pretty soon after they start digging things up. And Gino's like, what in the fuck am I seeing here, Patrick? You've lied to me a lot, but this is like over the top, which fair enough, Gino. I agree with him in that regard.
Yep.
Um, and Patrick is like,
Well,
you know, he was like, it's not what it looks like. It's like, it looks pretty bad.
yeah.
But no, it was a freak accident, which
Mm,
I don't know. Okay. Okay, so that's when we get the flashback to 1979.
right.
And apparently Patrick met Sam on Fire Island when he was lying to
Right off the ferry.
Barbara about where he was going. He's saying he was on a like a on watch or something, watching out what like spotted up watching a criminal, so that way he could go be himself.
Right.
So yeah, pretty much as soon as he walks off the boat, he gets invited to Patrick's party, and that's where he meets Billy. And what we just know about Billy is he seems to be,
A twink.
um, yeah, but I think they mentioned he was like from some small town where he was probably not accepted, and so he made it out and
Fresh off
started
the
living in
bus,
the
I think is what they
city.
say.
hmm So they're at the party. It's wild. Not like the typical scenes that Patrick clearly gets to participate in. Lots of drugs. Sam gets them both coked up out on the dance floor, kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
they've
they begin to
done.
pursue kind of a three-way situation, but as Sam says, someone gets to be the special one. Um, Special one is I don't know if that's the position you want to be in, but Billy
Mhm.
volunteers. He leathers up, and Sam puts them in some stockades that look like they're out of the Dark Ages or something like that. Then we get a pretty, I mean, relatively graphic, at least somewhat drawn out, like violent. I mean,
I wouldn't
I
call
don't
it
know that I want to say
violent.
violent.
Yeah.
We get a sex scene. I don't know that I'd call it violent, but effectively what happens, right, is he.
Yeah.
I mean, excuse me for putting it this way, but um, Patrick fucks him to death, right? Like, so he has. Let's talk about. I mean, I don't want to linger on it too long because it's pretty gruesome, but he's got like a choker type thing on, and he's in the stockades.
Yeah.
Is
And
the
it's like,
sense that he like suffocates from like being tugged on it. Like, if you feel like the stockades are around his neck and he's like going back and forth in it, it's like choking him, right? But
yeah.
you feel like he would vocalize that. I don't know. It's
I,
not entirely clear to me exactly
right.
how he died. But again, he was also on a ton of drugs too, so maybe that could
Ton of
be it.
drugs. There was no, and this is not my experience because I don't dabble in this world, but generally, if you're in something like that, there is sort of a air hole or a mask or a ventilator of some sort, and they make it seem like was going on for a long time because Patrick and Sam are kind of like tag teaming, doing some
Back
coke,
and
and then
forth.
coming back, and like, and directed direction. It was pretty awesome because it kept getting kind of like fuzzier as it went on. So I'm assuming that he probably suffocated,
Mm.
and but they don't know how long, which is where it gets really morbid, and because he looked like he was dead for a little bit
I mean,
before
his
they
eyes are
realized
open.
it.
Right, and then like it's like yeah. But I mean, it's again. We should say at one point Sam stops Patrick from like
Yeah.
I don't know exactly at that point what indicates to them that something is not right with
Hmm.
Billy, but that's when they take the mask off. His eyes are open and glassy
And
like
yeah,
that.
he's been gone for a little bit.
Yeah, so that's pretty disturbing for one
Ugh.
thing. So that's bothering. The other part too is that immediately Sam starts sputtering and being like, he consented, this was consensual. And it makes that scene from a prior episode in which Patrick goes to investigate Sam and they have the cage downstairs where I think Freddie was in the cage. It makes that way darker when we know that Sam
Hmm.
participated in this and someone died and he still is like
Right.
into this stuff, right?
Right. 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 And how much more would Patrick have investigated that because of this relationship they have from this experience?
Right, exactly. So they luckily though, Sam knows a fixer by the name of
And
codename Velvet. The Velvet Touch.
Uh,
Did this feel like a Pulp Fiction allusion to you?
I didn't hear that in when I was watching, but that is amazing. And yes, it would be.
Yeah, little Harvey Keitel. What is he known as in Pulp Fiction? It's like is it like the something Fox? Um, I don't remember what his. Oh, Winston Wolfe is his character, aka the Wolf. It's not the Fox. It's the
Not
Wolf.
the wolf.
But
It's
but
yeah.
he's the fixture that comes to clean up the dead
Yeah.
body that's in Samuel L. Jackson's in John Travolta's car.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
so that felt like a little bit of an illusion to me, the Velvet Touch. But he shows up, um, and he brings an associate who's there intended to dismantle the body. Of course, that associate happens to be Mr. Whiteley himself. Again, this is 2 years before our current time.
Right.
Henry basically threatens Whiteley. It seems like Whiteley doesn't want to do the job at this point, so I feel like we're supposed to get the sense that this is early on in Whiteley's
Yeah, he
dismemberment days.
says like, oh, like it's like a beautiful boy. Like we've done like bad people in the past. Like this is seems like an innocent person. Why would I do that?
I get the sense a little bit that this is supposed to be a Whiteley origin story because what
I
happens is Henry threatens to call Whiteley's mother and be like, I'll call Mama and tell her what you are unless you do this." And
yeah.
so, I mean, the scene in which he's carving up the body kind of goes on for a long time, and the sounds are disturbing. There's a lot
I
of bone saw and
I fast
like
forwarded.
cracking.
I couldn't.
I mean, I did listen through it and watch. It was a little bit much. I mean, it's literal saw happening, right? Albeit with the dead body.
Ah,
But we see him like cut through all the different body parts. But also, I think partly what we're supposed to see in this scene is like him starting to enjoy it, right? Coming to find he enjoys it, and that's where this kind of origin story piece comes from.
I 100% wrote
Um,
origin story as well.
because I think even at the end, he says something about it being beautiful, and then he also says something about like someone should have been watching out for him and stuff. And these are like,
Yep.
when we learn about his philosophy as a killer later, I feel like he utilizes some of the same phrases.
Yep. Exactly.
So that's the end of our flashback, and well, I should have mentioned the part two that at one point Patrick says we should call the cops, and Sam says the cops can't know, and Patrick says I am a cop,
I'm
and
a
Sam is
yeah,
like, hey, why did you tell me you're a cop?
because I'm
So
on
they have that whole
drugs.
exchange as well. So Sam knew Patrick was a cop from back then. Jumping back to the day, so that's how we now know the connection between Henry and Sam and
Patrick.
Patrick and a little bit Whiteley kind of all knew each other from the past. So again,
Hmm.
your two Agatha Christie kind of threads. I don't think we've seen Sam and Henry interact. I don't think we've seen Patrick and Henry interact. We have
Right.
seen Patrick and Sam interact, but didn't quite know the extent to which they knew each other.
Right.
But again, I do feel like if we watch that scene, it would it would be more clear.
Or we'll go back and watch it and be like, mm, we should have. We could write that.
Maybe, maybe. But
I doubt it.
as they're reburying the body, which Gino decides he's gonna help because he's like, what the fuck else am I gonna do, basically?
He's stuck.
He is pretty stuck. Patrick happens to notice that the bones are cut up in the same way as the Mai Tai killer. I don't know enough about body dismemberment to know if that's like a typical thing that he would notice, that like,
This is
it would
so
be that clean.
CSI. It's so CSI. Like, oh, the same curvature of the bone in this murder weapon looks exactly like what we've been investigating. And we do know that we've seen dismemberment in the killer with the bodies, like think back to the first episode with the decapitation, right? So this is kind of a classic CSI discovery.
We just needed Patrick to
Revelation.
Smart ass and like lower his sunglasses.
Yeah, Horatio.
And sound in the background. Yeah. But at this point too, I was like, well, doesn't Henry know who the Mai Tai killer is? Because we harken back to when Gino first interviews him. I'm pretty sure that Henry is like, oh yeah, I see a guy hanging around the bar. He hangs out at the last call and he puts something in people's drink and takes them away. And so
I had the same question.
I don't know. I mean, do we really believe that Henry doesn't know that Whiteley's the Mai Tai killer? But maybe it's just Gino finally convinces him that Whiteley has to go and that it's the right thing to do. Not entirely clear.
Right. I thought that maybe that means that Henry's in on it and he knows what's going on because of the brownstone and what happens and the Mai Tais. Like, good Lord, you think he would know. But the next scene that we get shows us like, I guess not. I guess he's a dummy. I doesn't really
Right.
make sense.
Well, before we follow Henry and Gino to meet up with Whiteley, I will say that like this was a very well, I'll say the flashback was very dark, very, very
Yeah,
dark. The present scene, actually, Sam was a pretty funny character with some of his lines here. So it was a little
yeah,
bit of a weird contrast, you know what I
yeah.
mean?
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, no, Sam actually gave me some comedy that we maybe needed a little bit, and it wasn't like sassy, like over the top stuff. It was just it was actually in step with his character and what his character would do because
Mm-hmm.
he's a very vain money type of dude. Uh, but he also wants to just like pay it off, bury it, whatever. Like $10,000, do it. Like get it, just get it out, get
Yeah.
this away from me. Um, I will say that whole sequence with the four of them on the beach before we move on to like where they branch off to made me really enjoy each of the characters. I've always liked Gino, although he can be a little frustrating sometimes because he can be a lot. But I really started to like Sam a little bit, and I've always loved Dennis O'Hare when that whatever he does.
We
But
haven't gotten him that much.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But this whole episode of him turning into be this like fixer for the mob, and then what he goes
Oh,
through, I'm
I
rooting
love
for
that.
him.
That might be my favorite. That might be my favorite twist from this episode was that he's
Yeah,
actually a
I
mob
love it.
fixer, a mob hitman, you know.
Yeah.
The velvet, what do they call him? The velvet touch. I love that. um, so yeah, Henry and Gino are now plotting to take to, and it's not fully clear to me at what point Henry realizes that like he does need to change his tune and do it. I guess he must believe. I guess Patrick seeing the way the body's cut up must convince Henry that Whiteley is the guy and that like he
Well,
should
and
maybe he feels more responsible for the killings after that, even though because Gina's tried to make him feel some like
guilt.
involvement in the past, and he's been like, nah, nah, man,
Yeah,
like it's not my
yeah.
thing. But I mean, I wish that would have been hinted at maybe a little bit more so we could understand like follow kind of his change in tone. But
Right, right. Well,
all the sentiment,
when he makes the call, are we there yet?
yeah, that's exactly where we're
Okay.
at. Mhm.
So when he makes the call to Whiteley, and talks to him and says, "I got a job for you," and he's like, "I'm busy." They go back and forth, and let me pick you up. Or he says, "Okay, I'll do it," because he has to, because he's got, he doesn't have leverage. They have leverage. The mob has leverage on him, and he says, "Where can I pick you up?" Henry says, "Where can I pick you up?" And Whiteley says, "Meet me at 9 p.m. at the Maltese." And as soon as they hang up, Henry says he knows something's up. So he knows that Mr. Whiteley knows that something's askew, which is fantastic because the rest of this sequence, the last 5 minutes of the show, I thought were really awesome, where it's this tension of he knows they're meeting. And I'm actually obviously always rooting for Gino, but now I'm rooting for Henry too, because I think he's, trying to, you know, sort of
Redeem
he's not
himself or something.
he's
Yeah.
not I feel he's not trying to absolve himself. He's just like, redeem himself as much as he can. And this very tall, lanky serial killer who isn't who's big and physical, but not like Big Daddy, still poses this like impending threat when you're ever by alone with him, that we learned from the elevator scene 2 episodes ago, which was also phenomenal.
Yeah.
So anyway, Henry goes to meet him at the bar while Gino waits in the car. But they
Hmm.
decide we got to do it now. We can't,
Hmm.
like, we're not gonna be able to turn him in. We got to just handle this.
I like this scene too. Inside, Whiteley has already bought Henry and Mai Tai by the time we sit down.
And I like he's
And
like,
Henry like very clearly
nope,
like sticks the hand and pushes it away. I'll have a
whiskey.
whiskey, please. Um, and immediately you kind of see Whiteley be like, "Oh, so you're on to me, right?" And so we
Hmm.
can see that there is something there. Um, it makes you wonder what it was. So it must be the fact that um, Henry asked for his address that like alerted Whiteley that something was up, because they must be very careful to like always meet someplace or something like
Hmm.
that, right?
Yeah, Henry must have stumbled.
One thing I did think here is like, I mean, and this didn't bother me with the storyline because look, I mean, people can do irrational things, but Whiteley's really dabbling in some dangerous territory, trying like potentially trying to take out a mob hitman, right? Because
Good point.
even if he thinks something's up, well, I guess at this point he's maybe fighting for his life. Maybe he thinks the mob's out to get him for one reason or another, right?
Hmm.
Maybe like the mob thinks that he's like hurting their business too much and people aren't going to come to their bars or something if they're getting murdered all the time. So maybe he's, to a certain extent, maybe he's expected this for a while, and thinks that Henry's coming at him on behalf of the mob. But also by doing something to Henry, he also again risks further backlash from the mob. But
Right.
Whiteley says, "Excuse me while I go to the bathroom first." Henry doesn't let it, I mean, really doesn't linger that long, pulls out his gun and pretty quickly follows him back into the bathroom.
It's suspicious.
There was a moment in this piece where I thought, oh, maybe Whiteley's going to climb out of a window and like jump into the car with Gino. But I was like, oh, Gino's not going to get kidnapped by Whiteley again.
No, but
Um,
I don't know. He could, but that's exactly what I thought too. Gino kept looking out the window. I was like, he's gonna turn the other way, and Whiteley's gonna be there. But
mhm.
I think
But
they knew that
no,
we would think that, which is great.
yeah.
Great
Well,
direction.
no, Whiteley was like behind the door of the bathroom or something like that. Henry kicks open the stall, which presumably Whiteley closed in order to make him think he was in there.
Hmm.
Injects something into his neck, I believe.
Hmm.
Um,
Sedative is probably.
Probably the same thing he puts in people's drinks, right?
Hmm.
And follows and basically makes Henry look like he's drunk as he drags him out of the bar and throws him in his car.
His
Um,
move.
Just in time, though, for Gino to follow him back to presumably his apartment, the same apartment that Gino was trapped in previously, and go to another outdoor payphone, call Patrick, tell him he needs him. Who Patrick presumably is still on Fire Island, I guess, reburying Billy's body.
Yep. Right.
So we're gearing up for a showdown between Patrick and um,
Patrick,
Gino.
Gino, and I would love if Sam showed up too. All
We'll see if Sam feels some obligation or not,
yeah,
but at least they're going to.
descending
At this point,
onto.
Henry's theoretically still alive, so we're going to see if Henry gets saved, I guess. But that's kind of our cliffhanger, right?
Yeah, I hope he does. He's so
Me
great.
too. Me too. Wow. So
A lot.
yeah, a
Just
lot. I mean, this
much.
episode for last episode being somewhat uneventful, this episode was very eventful.
Yeah.
I don't know. Tell me how you feel about it.
So back to back, I think last episode was meant to just make sure we spent time with some of those characters so they didn't fall to the wayside. Because truly the main story is Patrick, Gino, the serial killer, and now sort of Sam because of their connection. I said earlier, but I think the connection that Henry and Sam and Patrick knew each other beforehand because of this event is awesome. I love that reveal. I don't think it was like executed like completely the best way, but I was still into it primarily because I love relationships that are based off or that you don't know actually existed, but there's little seeds along the way. Um, I I have to go back and rewatch because through the course of 6 episodes, I don't know if it was set up in a way where everyone could be like, "Oh shit," where you kind of things come together. This just feels like it was, and they know each other actually. Um, but that being said, I think it really was much more action packed. It completely advanced the plot with relationships and where things are going, which is important to do in a 10 episode series. Um, I didn't miss any of the other people. I actually think I wasn't as into Hannah Wells as much anymore. I'm like, her storyline is not the most exciting. The exciting storyline is these people who are doing the investigation. Um, I I really liked this episode. I'm glad that I had the chance to watch them separate, but but one day apart, so I still can reference the first episode, episode 5, um, Bad Fortune. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say I would give this 4.25 Mai Tais.
Solid bounce
I really
points.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And all your comments that you had said, like origin story, like, oh God, it's like an origin story for everybody, sort of.
Mhm.
I was it executed perfectly? No, but for American Horror Story, hell yeah, this is great.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it did a pretty good job, and it brought stories together in an interesting way. It was like good background that I mean, honestly, it adds layers to Sam as a character. Makes it darker, but like adds definitely fills in some of the blanks on Patrick and like where a lot of his darkness comes from, having been involved in that. Uh, and the background too on Henry, like getting his background as a mom picture. Again, really love that piece of the story. I agree with you that like I was less interested in the Hannah Wells piece at the beginning. I don't know that it was all that valuable to like see them go talk to her. But yeah, this episode, I mean, again, the death was pretty disturbing. But it was like a pivotal plot point, and I do feel like it brought a lot of stuff together, and it brought us to that tense scene at the bar, and then of course the cliffhanger we get at the end of this episode. Um, I agree with you too that like in retrospect, it makes me feel like the episode prior to this almost could have been cut completely. Um, I don't know. It's almost like we just needed a tool to like kind of almost like get rid of Barbara, like we didn't know what to do with her storyline. And then it was also like, oh hey, Adam and Theo
Good
are here
point.
too, and Fran, you know.
Yeah,
Um, so I was like, after watching this, I'm almost there's part of me that would like knock last episode down an additional quarter point based
I
on this.
know. Yeah.
Because it is just totally unrelated or feels like that. Um, but I agree with you all the way through otherwise. And I think this I mean, I think I'm going to give this episode a 4. I don't think it was perfect, but I think it was good. I think it was a good kind of pullback, and I'm glad it kind of got us back on track after the last episode that seemed somewhat meandering. Um, I don't know. I do have some questions for you. Like, I'm curious where you think the rest of the season is going based on where we're at now. If I
Okay.
had to predict, I feel like next episode uh
The Sentinel
7,
7
it almost feels like maybe episodes 7 and 8. So the Sentinel is like his weird
body. We're gonna see the
Frank
body actually.
Frank and
Yeah.
body,
Yeah.
maybe the Pride Parade.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're not going to actually see Whiteley meet his comeuppance next episode, but
I don't think so.
I almost feel like it might happen though in the next 2 episodes. And I feel like we might use the back 2 episodes to tell the rest of the Big Daddy and the HIV story.
Uh,
That's my guess as to where we're going, because I feel like they're going to need a couple episodes to let the whole Hannah Wells story and
yeah.
Plum Island and everything breathe a little bit.
The last 2 episodes are, I believe, titled like Requiem Part 1 and Requiem Part 2 for 1981 and 1987 or something like that. So we'll get the flash forward possibly to see where people are at. Slash,
Well, so theoretically, someone's going to be a survivor, right?
yeah,
And I think we know not everybody's going to be, so it's kind of a toss up at this point. We're
yeah.
just going to go through it.
It's gonna be very dark because seemingly everyone's has HIV at this
Do
point.
we do we know anybody at this point who doesn't? I guess we're not entirely sure, like first, because like Gino at first only had fleas, but then
It's
we
like,
also know
yeah.
that his
Oh,
that
Gino,
like,
yeah.
but,
Theo, I
but
think, is the only one that we don't know. Hasn't shown anything with blood count. Oh no, but you said that possibly his blood was taken by Hannah and they all showed low
they all
blood,
had
red blood.
low T cells.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I mean, I guess it would be like Kathy.
Kathy? Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
guess so.
And
I
Henry, I guess we don't know Henry.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Henry, yeah. Oh, that'd
If
be
he
great if
if
he
he survives
survives.
Whiteley,
Yeah. Did you
because
watch the
even Whiteley, I think we believe has HIV. If we remember back to when he
Oh, he
was
was at
talking to,
he's like, my cat scratched me.
yeah, the cat scratch thing.
Big, huge shout out to Jeff Hiller, who plays Mr. Whiteley. He is crushing it. He is so good. We've talked about him a few times, and I loved him in Somebody Somewhere, that HBO show, and he's hilarious in it. I looked him up earlier, and he's actually also a comedian. So this is a very funny, different role for him. But I think he's fantastic, and
I props to this dude for being able to be
yeah,
both like kind of comedic,
he's
but also quite sinister.
yeah, he's got that perfect tinge to him that allows you to fear him, but also kind of chuckle when he does some sinister things.
He must be a
It's
huge guy too, right? He looks like he must
I looked
be.
him up. Where's my screen there? 6'5".
Yeah, he's a big
Yeah,
dude.
he's a tall dude. Um, and again, I'm gonna say like definitely check out the show Somebody Somewhere on HBO if you're into that type of stuff. It's in Kansas. Um, I think I'm excited to see what this body looks like, the Sentinel next episode. If the preview had this, the trailer, and it's supposed to like, I think they all see it, and I think we see Henry still trapped. So
Last thing I wanted to ask you too. So we're going to come back to the Big Daddy thing. Okay, so if we keep thinking of like, well, when have we seen like the Big Daddy? Well, so we've seen the straight, like the body that, you know how like there's the leather body that is always like seeming to be at Sam's front
oh
door.
yeah, his doorman.
It makes it seem that much weirder that Sam still has that after having had that disturbing experience with somebody in a leather mask. I was gonna say I'd like somehow draw this back to being like some kind of like haunting thing in Sam and Patrick's subconscious, but then again, other people see that the Big Daddy person too. So
Maybe it's infected people though. Only infected people see it.
right. Well, I think that's probably true.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is the plot line that I have questions around how it's going to be answered. That seems like I'm worried with the one that's more likely to veer into the paranormal. I'm preferring this more noir-esque, dark detective,
yeah, me too,
story, with Whiteley as the killer right now. That's where my mind's at.
Yep, I agree.
Any final thoughts on this episode?
I'm excited. I think I like that you and I got to do it differently, where we watch one and one, back to back on different days as opposed to slammed right against each other. So that was interesting. I think the acting caliber is fantastic in this show, and I really look forward to see what they're gonna do, because we still don't necessarily have complete supernatural things happening. Last episode, we had some kind of visions and stuff, but that could also be just hallucinations and written off that way, or people going through some mental trauma, perhaps. I think everything that's happened so far could be written off as actual literal realistic things that have happened or through mental issues, if that makes sense.
Right.
We haven't had
also
a lot that tells me otherwise. Like there's
Yeah.
no one that died that came back to life.
No, and hopefully that stays that way. Well, maybe Big Daddy. But yeah, I get what the point you're making. And I agree with you too that the acting caliber, especially this episode too, was great because I feel like, okay, Zachary Quinto, Russell Tovey, Joe
Manello.
Manello. I always his last name. I always want to say the guy that's married to Sofia Vergara. And obviously Dennis O'Hare and the guy you were just talking about. What's something Heller, right? What's his first name?
Mantello. Sorry, Joe Mantello and Jeff Hiller. And Jeff Hiller.
All five of those guys,
they're great.
Kill it. They're I mean, and they play off each other really well.
They do.
This was like an incredibly well acted episode. So we should call that out.
Yeah.
Big fans. Yeah. So we'll see where things go next week. There's a lot of drama, high drama, leaving us at this cliffhanger. So we'll be excited to rejoin you all next week to, I guess, follow up on exactly whatever happens.
Woohoo.
Kris, where can people find you between now and next week?
I'll be on Instagram at Kris Husted, Kris with a K. What about you, Tyler? I still have my Twitter, but I'm just there to look. I'm not there to engage anymore.
Wah, wah. I'm on Instagram too at TJMoss11. And you can check us out on YouTube at This American Horror Story Podcast. Thank you all for listening. We sincerely appreciate it. Hope you all have an awesome week, and we're excited to chat with you next week for the back end of American Horror Story NYC. Until then, thank you so much. Reach out to us as always via our Gmail at This American Horror Story at Gmail, or on Facebook at facebook.com/This American Horror Story. Until next week, folks, hope you have a good one and happy huntings.